listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hi.
Hey.
Well, this episode did not go as expected, and
life is just not going as expected, and
it's not, is it? Yeah. So you and I are not in the same room right now, and as we're recording this intro and outro, you were not on this interview, which you were supposed to be, and it's okay that you weren't. Life happened. It's fine. Joanna and I did it by ourselves, and it was fine. We did have a special guest, though.
Is that right?
We did. Lucy made an appearance.
Oh.
So I will, I don't really need to apologize, but I will warn you guys that in this episode, our friend Joanna, who we have had on the podcast 2 times before, she was actually our very first expert interview in April of 2018.
Wow, that's right.
We did an episode with her called Emotional Constipation with Joanna Platt.
That's right.
And then we had her back in August of 2019 with our friend Stacy, who's also been on the podcast separately. What is a podcast if not a place to pick favorites and be kind of, I don't know.
Hang out with your friends with the recorder on.
Yeah, just like nepotism, basically. Whatever. It's right. My podcast, my rules. I am a dictator. I'm not.
This is not a democracy.
This is not a democracy. So anyway, we had an episode in August 2019 where we did a best friends roundtable about people pleasing. And I don't remember what we talked about. So that would be a fun episode.
I remember
to scroll back to.
Me and Joanna and Stacy were the people pleasers, and you were the resident non-people pleaser.
Yeah.
And so it made for an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. So that could be a fun one to go back and listen to. But anyway, Joanna she wanted to come back on the podcast. She pitched me, not even pitched, just said in a catch-up conversation that I was having with her recently, like, hey, if you ever want me to come back on the podcast and talk about how for the past 5 years, I've realized I've been living very out of alignment with my passion profile. And I feel like it's been wreaking havoc on my life. I would be glad to come and share that. And I said, sure. You want to do it next week? So she did. She came on, and her daughter, who is 17 months old, was supposed to be taking a nap. And we laugh because she's apparently an amazing sleeper, but yesterday she decided she was not going to take a nap.
Of course.
So for about half the time she was upstairs in her crib. And then about 30 minutes in, Joanna went and got her. And so you will hear in the last 20-ish, 25 minutes of the episode, you will occasionally hear a baby in the background, or we will talk to the baby occasionally. I did cut out a little bit here and there where I could. I did listen back to it and gave some editing notes so that you don't have to hear as much of the baby content. But I mean,
this is real life.
Baby content. Yeah, it's real life. Also, of course, because Joanna is a very emotionally available person, to say the least. This episode, when we were laughing, she was crying. She did get choked up a couple times, and that's just such a Joe thing.
That's what I love about her.
Yeah. So I think you guys will appreciate this conversation, even though it was a little unpredictable and I don't think your experience of it will be. I think the fact that it exists at all is a testament to the fact that the universe wanted you to hear it, because a lot of things went sideways in trying to get it out to you.
Well, I'm excited to hear it because I was supposed to be there. And since I wasn't, I'm going to listen with everyone else.
Exactly. Okay. So why don't you go ahead and read her bio and just remind people of who she is?
Okay. Joanna Platt is the creator of the Joy of Enough method, a system that helps high achievers break out of the cycle of burnout so they can have more life's good moments. Joanna coaches high achievers who are on a never-ending treadmill of obligations and to-dos and burn themselves out again and again. She helps her clients create and implement a burnout to balance blueprint so that they can be present with their people, take care of their health and well-being, and be an A-list player at work. You can further connect with Joanna through her podcast, The Joy of Enough, available on iTunes and Spotify, or on Instagram at Joanna_Platt. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well.
I'll also link to the episodes we did with her previously so that you can go back, because if you are newish to this podcast, you probably haven't gone back to 2018 or 2019. And you're missing out on some good stuff. That would be a lot
of listening, but we did. We have some gems from back in the day.
I'll also try to throw in a couple episodes specifically related to passion profiles, since this is one of those where we're really only talking about like aligning with your passion profile and what happens when you're not. So I'll think through some episodes that I think are relevant if you like this subject and you want to hear more on this particular subject. So, all right, enjoy this conversation with Joanna, and we will be back at the end. Hello, my friend.
Hi.
Welcome back to the podcast after, you've actually been on it twice. I don't even know if you remember that.
Was one time with Stacy?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I remember the feelings one. My best interview ever, I feel like.
That was one of our very first expert interviews back in 2018, like right when the podcast came out. So about 6 years ago now,
wow.
If you can believe. And yeah, we talked to you about emotional constipation, which also is one of my favorite. I mean, we've had a lot of good conversations, but I don't know. I love that we went there with that phrase and doubled down on it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you were with us when we had a chat with Stacy too. And I honestly don't even remember at this moment what we talked about with Stacy.
No, don't remember.
But that's okay.
But I'm sure it was great.
I'm sure it was great. And I'll link to it in the show notes. That was probably a year or two later, like 2019, maybe 2020. So yeah, I will link to it in the show notes. But it's been a while and you're back. And
I'm back.
You volunteered to come back. I didn't even ask you to come back. You were like, hey, do you want me to come on your podcast? And basically talk about a problem I'm having. I was like, great. I'm in the market for a guest. Hit me up.
Win-win.
So the what you pitched me was, I realized that for quite some time now, and I think you and I might on this podcast actually try to get to the bottom of when it started. And
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this might be part sharing my story and part coaching. Who knows?
Part coaching. That's fine. But you said I've been living out of alignment with my passion profile for quite some time. And I'm realizing that I've been struggling and that a lot of the issues that I might be having is sort of a result of that misalignment. And I think that's a conversation people need to hear, because even people like you and me who are super into personal development and we're very self-aware and we're constantly analyzing and questioning and trying to find alignment. Even we can get ourselves in a situation where we wake up one day and we're like, wow, this isn't working. And I'm feeling pretty misaligned. So if it can happen to us, it can happen to anybody. So I think this is great. Very worth talking about. Thanks for pitching it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm excited. I hope that it's valuable to people listening.
Okay. Well, let's set the stage by asking you, what is your passion profile? Because we got to know what you are to know how you got out of alignment with it.
So I am a collaborator and a side hustler.
Yes. A nice little combo.
Yeah. And I have been now a solo entrepreneur for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So you can see how this would be deeply misaligned.
Okay.
Deeply misaligned.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's been for probably 5 years. And it's really interesting because when I was about to quit my job, there was a voice inside of me that said, you're going to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to be alone. But I just was so focused on I got to quit my job. I got to get this business off the ground. I got to do this. And I ignored that voice that said, you're going to be alone.
I think, okay, I want to explore this because I feel like what you might be getting at that you're not actually yet saying is that sometimes we can get so excited about an idea or like the mission or the purpose or the work of what it is that we want to do. And for you, it was, I mean, for those of you, I might say this in the intro, but for those of you who don't know, like Joanna and I met, and Kristen, day one of coach training in 2012. And so when you quit to start your own business, it was a coaching business. And you obviously cared a lot about the work that you were doing and you were really excited about it. And I feel like that can often, understandably, like overtake our anything else almost. Like I think that almost can like cloud our deeper kind of values and passion profile and that type of stuff. Am I onto something?
Yeah, and it's really funny because this isn't the first time in my career that I had tunnel vision, but essentially that's what happened. Was I got tunnel vision. I was like, oh, coaching is going to be my career, and the way to be a life coach is to create your own business. And then I learned about the world of like online business and online courses and membership and stuff like that. And so then it was like, okay, so now I'm going to build a membership. I'm going to build out this like online course business. At some point I'll have a team with me. It'll like, could make like $1 million a year. I could retire my husband. Like, and so I just kind of like, even in saying this back to you, I can feel like it's just all in my head. Like it's from like my shoulders up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
it's a mental thing.
Head. It's such a mental thing of like, well, yeah, this just sounds great.
Yeah. On paper, this sounds fantastic. Like starry-eyed over the prospects.
Well, and like, in some ways, I like look back at myself and I'm like, damn, girl, like you lived out of alignment for an extremely long time trying to make this starry-eyed thing happen. Like the level of work that was required, not just like the actual work, like of trying to find my niche, trying to find doing marketing for clients, trying to find and build my signature program. Like that was like work. But then there was also the like grind of just getting back up to the plate day after day after day when it just wasn't working. And I think the biggest thing, when I think about like what happens when you're living out of alignment with your profile is that I didn't have any fuel. So not only am I trying to build this thing, but I'm trying to build this thing while running on empty. Because when you're living in alignment, you are fueled. Like you have all of your resources available, your mental, emotional, your intelligence, like all of your resources are online. And so that was a big hurdle to overcome. A really big hurdle.
It's a visual I try to paint when anybody is sort of new to the whole concept of passion profiles is that when you're working or living, and it doesn't have to just mean passion profile, there's so many different elements of alignment. There's so many different spectrums that we're all on, like introvert, extrovert. If I, even if I was living in alignment with my passion profile, if I had a job or a role of some kind that required me to be incredibly extroverted, that's incredibly out of alignment for me. And so any way in which you're living or working out of alignment requires you expend, I mean, obviously don't know the actual number, but I feel like it's like 10 times, the amount of energy just to get from, it's like, sailing upstream. You have to expend so much more energy. If you're rowing a boat upstream from point A to point B, it takes so much work to go against that current. Whereas if you're going with the flow, which is alignment, getting from point B to point A takes no time at all. And not only that, you don't even have to row. Like you're just kind of like carried. And so, yeah, it does. It requires so much energy to just literally stay at neutral when you're out of alignment, let alone make headway, which I feel like in hindsight, sort of looking back on your journey, I feel like that's a lot of what it ended up looking like, was that you were really like almost like treading water to stay at neutral.
Yeah.
Like progress was something that was really what felt like it was really hard to make.
Yeah. And it didn't really make sense either, because I'm a very smart person. I'm a very like passionate person. I'm a very, like, I have a high level of withedness, like, and it's not for a lack of effort.
Mm-mm.
It's not for a lack of trying. Like, I took a membership, like a course on launching a membership. And I was, out of like 5 or 6 people in my group, I was the only person that actually launched.
Wow.
And like, I launched it and people joined, but it didn't turn out to be what I thought it was going to be. So, but yeah, a big part of that is like just the starry-eyed or like tunnel vision. Like I just didn't allow any other options to even like come into my world, because I was just like, I got to make this happen. 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 The other analogy that comes to mind when thinking about living out of alignment was, and like the fuel piece of it is like, I was hungry. Like that's what it feels like. Like there was a big, for me, people are such a part of how I get energy and how I find alignment and how I find inspiration. And I think part of my gifts too, like I'm just meant to be around people. Like I come alive around people. And so for 5 years, I just kind of haven't been alive. And like my husband has said, like, you're not happy. Like you haven't been happy in a long time. And which is very permission giving, because I'm like, oh, happiness is the point. Like, you know?
Yeah.
But I just was so focused on like, just got to get this business going, got to get this business going, got to like, then yeah, I just kind of ignored the alignment. Or then I did like some things. So I got a part-time job, like probably a year after leaving my full-time like salaried job. I got a part-time job at like a little gift shop in my neighborhood in DC. And that was good. But it's just funny. There are like hints of like being a collaborator. Like it was a gift shop and there was the guest who came in and we sold these like big pieces of paper, and to get them out that you could use as like wrapping paper or posters or whatever. And to get it out of the store, I like rolled it up and I had the guest hold it and I tied a ribbon around it. Literally, Rachel, when I tell you, like my, like, now this is where it comes back into the body. Like this isn't a head thing anymore. I felt so fulfilled by that. Like literally, this was a small task that we were collaborating on. It probably took 90 seconds. And that filled me up so much. So much. And it was like, oh, okay. Like I see. But I worked by myself a lot in that job because it was such a small little shop. They didn't need multiple people working at one time. And then I recently got a job, like another part-time job. And that's been really fueling. And I recently took like a temporary full-time leadership role with the company. And that's been, I have been more balanced. I've been in the role for 3 weeks and I've been more balanced in the last 3 weeks than I have in like the last 5 years.
Wow.
Which you would think that like freedom, like before that I had time freedom, like we didn't have kids, like
yeah.
Now I have a daughter and another baby coming soon, but at that point, like I had freedom. Like I literally could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Like, and for the first couple of years, I was living in DC. We were like living in a city, like, but it was actually extremely unbalanced. Extremely unbalanced.
So interesting. Because in hindsight, whenever I saw you, I saw happy you. But now I realize the reason I always saw happy you was because you love being around people.
Yeah.
And so I didn't actually see, it's not like I didn't know that I knew you were struggling at times, but it's like I didn't get to see that version of you that was really having the hardest time, because the version of you that was having the hardest time was alone. And yeah, like you said, all of that, it's so interesting. It's like all of that freedom that some of the people listening to this are like, oh my God, I would be so happy if I had so much time freedom. You know, I quit my job. My only focus is building a business. I don't have kids to be responsible for yet. Like some people, that's like a dream come true. And I'm like, it might be if you're a more introverted person whose main value isn't connection. Like for me, that sounds like winning the lottery, right? But for you, it literally doesn't, like, it actually made you feel worse to be in that position, which is, I know you couldn't have predicted that. I don't think when you quit your job. Okay. Let me ask a question before I forget. What is it that, like, you said earlier, like I had to build this business. Like it was a compulsion. It was like a need. I had to do this. Tunnel vision. What do you think is the root of like why you had to do it? And like literally had to sort of filter out other things that might have been legitimate concerns, right? Like, hey, this isn't really in alignment with like how you are wired, for example. That's huge. And you kind of like filtered that out with your tunnel vision. Why do you think that was?
Because I think the payoff. Okay, so let's rewind to the beginning of my career. Like this all started at the very beginning of my career. So I thought I was going to be a teacher until I retired. Like I graduated from undergrad. I thought I was going to I got a job as a 7th grade math teacher. And in my mind, I would have retired like as a teacher, maybe have been a principal at some point, because I do have like a lot of leadership capabilities. Within 3 months of my first job, I was like, this is not for me. So I quit teaching, and then I got a job in higher ed fundraising in a cubicle. And within 6 months in that job, I was like, what have I done? If I could describe my day in one word, it would be beige. And I wanted to help people be the best version of themselves. Like, I just really see the best in the people around me, and I just want to bring that out in them. And so I was like, what have I done? Like, now I'm sitting in front of a computer for 40 hours a week, like trying to make my work fit 40 hours a week, because sometimes there isn't even enough work for that. And I'm just sitting in front of like a mailing list, like making the lowercase a capital A in Avenue. Like, literally, what have I done? If I could describe my day in one word, it would be beige. Then I found coaching, and I was like, okay, that's me. That felt like me on like an identity level. So then I went through IPEC, and then it was like, okay, so now I got to figure out a way to make this work. And then the allure of online business, I think that it was just such an anecdote to beige. Like these videos that I would see of these entrepreneurs just like out in the world, they were Technicolor.
Yep.
You know, and it was just like, they're out in the world. They're with people, they're smiling, like they're outside. Like there was a lot of nature. They weren't sitting in beige cubicles with no windows.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed like this is the answer. Happiness is like joy, happiness, fulfillment, freedom, like all of these things can come from this one type of career.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going now. Because this beige, it hurts.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I necessarily knew that. Oh yeah, it was super reactive, but I didn't necessarily know that at the time.
Yeah. But that's like so common. I mean,
but it's funny. Go ahead.
Well, I just, in coaching people for the last decade plus now, it's like, this is the story, right? It's like, I thought in my very naive, like 18-year-old brain, I'm going to become a teacher because that sounds great. And like, then you become a teacher and you're like, oh, the reality of this is way different than I expected. And, nope, I can't do that. Like your body really rejected the whole notion of teaching once you were actually doing it. And then you get a job because you need a job. And then that job is beige. And you're like, oh, I hate this too. And so I'm going to react to that. And, oh my gosh, coaching is more aligned because, you know, it is a great way to, you know, be really of service to people in a deep, meaningful way. And there are so many vehicles in which you can do coaching, but you're right. The number one way that we get sold in terms of like how to, you know, make yourself the biggest success as a coach is very, well, it looks very glamorous, but it sort of doesn't account for how much of it is lonely. And also how hard it is to actually end up in that technicolor life. But it's like, we're in so much pain. Like you said, like the beige was painful that we'll just like willfully, I think sometimes ignore or shut down, even if it's unconscious, anything that contradicts that because we just want a solution to our problem. We just want the pain to go away.
Yeah. And then I think in the process, I think the pain of the last 5 years was significantly greater than the pain of the beige. Significantly greater.
How so?
Because it started to become a soul thing. It was very, very easy to be like, this job is a problem. Like the beige was an external problem. The misalignment felt like an internal problem, but I didn't know it was an internal problem. It was like, I just need to be better. I need to try harder. I need to do more. I need to like, you know, I just got to figure this out. I just got to figure this out. I just got to figure this out.
There's something wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus the pain of like, I think my soul has been, it's hard because in some ways my soul was fulfilled or my ego was fulfilled by the hope of it all. But my system was starved of meaningful human interaction. I have a very large capacity for human interaction.
You do. I've seen it in action. And you really are at your best when you're in that zone.
And I'm really at my low when I don't have that, even now. So now I am a part-time retail job, which is amazing. I'm feeling more balanced than ever. And then part-time home with my daughter. And I think I texted you like, my daughter is 17 months old. And I texted Rachel and I said, Lucy, this is how much of a tribe member I am, which was the name before Collaborator. But Lucy helped me unload the dishwasher and I feel like alive.
So fulfilled by this collaborative effort.
It's like she handed the silverware to me out of the dishwasher and I put it in the drawer and I felt like, again, it's these small things.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I lost my train of thought, but like, oh yeah, just this feeling of like being starved a little bit, like over the last however many years, of that like interaction and of that like collaboration. And even now, I'm more in alignment now. I'm working 4 days a week, and then I'm with Lucy 2 during the week, and then 1 on the weekends, like with our family. And so that feels more balanced, but there's like a low grade anxiety on the days when it's just me and Lucy and I'm not sure who I'm going to see.
Ugh.
And so that's what I was kind of living with.
Wow.
It would be like trying to like run a marathon without eating breakfast.
Yeah. Or like dinner the night before, you know?
Right.
Right. Like, I mean,
or however many meals.
Right. It could be a lot more than just 2. Yeah. Right. It's like chronically underfed and then trying to run a marathon.
Yes.
Right. Because this has been going on for years, right?
5. So, yeah. We're
like
coming up on 6.
This reminds me, do you remember not to quote my own podcast, but in Forever Alone, when I talk through, I go on a rant about how I got really fed up with people. In particular, this one person told me this and I lost it. Not on her, thankfully, but to other people, I just went off about how like we we treat single people like they should just be able to get over being malnourished of something that's like an actual human need. Like partnership
I do remember this.
is really important. And it's not something that you can easily replace with other types of relationships. Like, yes, obviously having like meaningful interactions with friends and family is imperative too. But you can't really, if you are the kind of person, and I would say most people are, who want a meaningful romantic partnership of some kind, you can't substitute it for anything else. And so when people don't like treat it accordingly, and when they act like, oh, well, like you should just like spend more time with your friends or what, it really undercuts how it is a vital nutrient that you are literally not getting. And you are trying to operate without that nourishment. And it becomes really difficult to operate after a certain period of time. And there's very little you can do to compensate for it. Like you can't, if you're deficient in B12, like it doesn't matter how much vitamin D you take, you aren't going to become more, whatever in B12. And I feel like that's what you're talking about right now too, is that it didn't really matter how much you worked on your business. It didn't really matter like how much you dreamed in Technicolor. It didn't really, honestly, I'm not even sure if it would have mattered if you'd been super successful. I think it would have just delayed the inevitable. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it would have probably hidden for longer the symptoms of your malnourishment, but I think that malnourishment still would have won out.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Oh, so, okay. Can you maybe like, just so that other people can understand? Now, I know yours is different and I'm not saying it always presents the same way, but I do think it would be helpful for you and I to like talk about how does a misalignment present itself so that like we can diagnose it in ourselves and also in other people. And also it's helpful because, this isn't, unfortunately, we're going to probably end up misaligned in in some way, shape or form later on down the road because that's life. But when we're able to identify it, then we can fix it quicker and not maybe spend 5 years misaligned the next time. So,
yeah,
like, how do you know you're misaligned?
So for me, I think the first two things that come to mind were that the misalignment presents as anxiety and longing. So the anxiety looks like, and I've noticed this recently, like particularly in this pregnancy, when I get hungry, I get this low level, like before my stomach will growl, I'll get this low level anxiety, this low level buzziness where I'm like, start to look around. Then I actually like weirdly, like will start to project like emotional things in like a way that's weird. And that was exactly how this would show up. Like, and it still shows up on days when like it's just Lucy and I together, and it has nothing to do with her. It has something to do with like, oh, what if I didn't know I was going to eat today? Like I would be really anxious. Kind of like, like when you're at a restaurant and you need something, like you're waiting for them to like refill your water, or you need a fork or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can't think about anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would start to like search outside of myself. So we moved. It's funny. The week the world closed for the pandemic, I was on the phone with my therapist talking about how isolated and alone I felt. And we were trying to like parse out, like, what is it about this job that is not right? And I like the marketing of it. I like the this of it. I like it was all the like parts of the job were fine. It was being alone. And so anyway, we moved from DC where there was a way to get like some of those needs met a little bit. through coffee shops, and like I would go and like work at like juice bars and stuff like that. But that doesn't quite fill the collaborator need. Like think about like the tying the ribbon. Like that is like me and this person are like are working on a similar thing right now in this moment. So being around people isn't quite
the same
answer. Yeah. But so it would just look like buzziness. So then we moved, pre-planned. We were planning to move back to where we grew up. We moved during the pandemic, and I started walking with my in-laws a couple times a week. And that became like a good ritual, but still we weren't creating anything together.
Yeah.
But it helped. But even now, like on date, like it's like I just start to think like, well, who can I call? Who's available? Like, who can we see? What can we do today? It looks like a lot of like, what can we do today? Like, it's just a mental, like trying to find the answer. The longing part of it, for me, presents as, I think the beautiful side of it is longing, but it presented as like a low-grade jealousy. Like, so we were here in the house, and I would be jealous of my husband, who was in his own ways miserable because he's a thriver.
Right.
And he was not in a thriver job.
Right.
He
would love to trade places. You guys really should have just traded places.
Honestly. And it's kind of been that way for a couple years.
Yeah.
So he was working from home because, well, first it was the pandemic, and then he had taken his DC job with him here to Pennsylvania. He literally was in a situation where he had like a workplace bully at one point. Like it was really bad. Like, and I still was jealous of like that he got to talk to people and like know what was happening in their weekend.
Yeah. Wow.
And now he is in the perfect thriver job. And I have often found myself kind of wanting to be hired there. Yeah. And so like, and jealous that he, not even in this case, like jealous necessarily that he gets to, but just like, damn, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. I want to be a part of something,
something. Yeah. And I don't even, it's funny because I was like, oh, like they're like hiring project managers. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love my project management work. Like, I mean, project management is actually a perfect collaborator job.
It is.
Could be. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, do they want to hire me? Which also like, what a weird thing to say. But like, he's like, I don't think you would like it. Like, I don't think you would like this work. Now, my husband and I have been together since high school. And we've known each other since 5th grade. So he knows me pretty well. And if he's saying like, you're not going to like it, like I should probably trust that. But even still, I'm like, I don't care. Like I want to be part of a team. And I think in the time between when we scheduled this conversation and now, I think my biggest takeaway is like, I'm really looking for a team. Like it's really important for me to be part of a team. But yeah, I think the misalignment presents as anxiety, longing, or jealousy. And then a little bit, and I hate to say this, but a little bit of like there's a part of me that thinks that if I were to get hired by my husband's company, that I would be saved.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, oh boy, that's not great. But there is that.
Well, but no, I'm doing that because I relate. There's like that part. I mean, I think all of us to some degree are lying if you say you can't relate to that. That like, yeah, part of misalignment will absolutely present sometimes as just like, I just want to be rescued from this situation.
Yes.
It's like the fantasizing about a magic solution that makes all of your problems go away. Right? Like,
right. Exactly.
Because it feels sometimes very insurmountable. And so I think part of the white knight kind of fantasy is like, I won't have to figure out how to surmount any of it. It just poof, magically, yes. And like, because I can't imagine having to dredge up the energy and like the wherewithal to change it. So I get that.
Right. And like, oh, they know me and like they like me and respect me. Like it's a very like small, like they threw like a shower for us. Like I have a decent relationship with like Mike's two bosses, like the owners of the company. Like it doesn't seem that in my fantasy, it doesn't seem that far fetched that they would just be like, but it's just ridiculous. Like then I think about actually going through the interview process. Like I know like what the interview process is. There's multiple steps, like, and then there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I don't actually think this is for me, but it doesn't matter because the fantasy is like, this could be great. This could be great.
Oh, our little guest is getting bored.
She's moving on. Yeah, are you showing Rachel your snack? Do you want to play with your game right there?
Joe, I think it's really funny that in this episode about how you're being misaligned as a collaborator, you couldn't even do this interview without collaboration from Lucy.
Yeah, right.
Like she always takes a nap. And today she's like, no, I'm not doing it.
Literally without like, she is such a good sleeper. I don't know if the audience will hear this part, but like, God bless.
I think I'll leave it in.
She is a great sleeper. And no, today just, she'll sleep for at least 2 hours.
That's
like
wild.
Clockwork.
Well, funny.
And today, no.
Love that. I mean, you kind of have to love that. I want to throw in a couple just other ideas of like ways misalignment might present, because I think for me, a lot of it, and I think for a lot of people, it's very physical. And I'm sure you also had physical symptoms of misalignment, right? Like, I mean, the chronic stress of being misaligned is going to lead to any number of ailments I think you can think of. Or it's going to like exacerbate existing conditions, like chronic ailments, autoimmune stuff, like sleep stuff, like gut, like your gut health, right? Like so many physical symptoms I think can pop up when you're chronically misaligned. And also just your energy. Like if you are just constantly tired, because it's fatiguing, again, to take 10 times the amount of energy to just stay at neutral, which is what's required when you're in misalignment. Like you're going to be tired, and that tiredness is not just going to be physical. It's going to be like an emotional soul level tiredness too, especially the longer that it goes on. I could probably come up with a longer list, but I feel like the physical stuff is so important because I think so many of us are sort of silently suffering with that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an interesting point for me. It's funny for me, like even like around like my period or like in pregnancy, my system processes stress more in like the mental emotional realm. Like I didn't get morning sickness. Like I've generally like felt pretty good physically, but my symptoms are like hormone, like they're moods, like intense, like mood swings, irritability, like frustration. Like they present that way, but I think misalignment absolutely could present as like back problems or headaches or like you said, sleep problems.
Yeah. And just mental health in general being poor. And of course it's tricky because I know there's like there's a lot of things that can lead us to be depressed. There's a lot of things that can lead us to have chronic, ailments or whatever. But I don't know. I think that sometimes we get siloed and we think, I don't know, maybe I just have a condition where I get, migraines all the time, or I have insomnia. And it's like, holistically, that doesn't make sense because there's got to be some sort of emotional component to most of the physical things that we're feeling. And a lot of it is too, like really deeply rooted, like in our past, like in our childhood traumas. And then whatever we're going through now, whatever misalignment we're going through now is maybe playing into that trauma in some way, which we didn't even get into. And I know exists for you and exists for all of us. We don't have to, that's a conversation, I think, for another time. Okay. So in the interest of like, time, because you have a child who I'm so proud of her for entertaining herself during this. She's playing with her shoes right now in the background.
Oh yeah. She's amazing. There are many things I want to preserve in this child. And one of them is her curiosity and her ability to just like do her own thing.
Love that. She's very independent and
she's super independent.
And look at
super independent, super curious. Right? Yeah, you're just doing your own thing. Yeah.
Good job with your shoes, Luz.
Yeah, you're awesome.
She's just playing with her shoes.
Well,
and like,
it's interesting. Like being a parent is like, I get to witness her just living in alignment most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my goal is to try to do that as much as I can and not knock her out of
her alignment.
Alignment. And when she is knocked out of alignment, she can say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's still so little.
She hasn't yet learned to override it.
She's not even a year and a half old yet.
Right.
I love that. Well, and it's your job as a parent to not override it as best as possible and to just like allow her to keep, learning how to maintain it, because she will. I feel like we would.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we weren't knocked out of alignment, if people didn't override our alignment with their own, expectations of us and all of that. That's again another conversation for a different day.
About, like at the very beginning, I was like, this is so mind.
Yeah.
Stuff. Like her mind is very sharp, but it is not yet preoccupied with what I want her to do.
Or what anybody wants. Society, right. Culture. Yeah. There's no expectation yet on her, which is just amazing.
Right.
A true
where for me with like career and, like I got very caught up in like my ego got very caught up in like the culture and society's games of money. Money is going to be the thing that buys the happiness. A career is going to be the thing that saves you. Like I have been in alignment in other times in my life and didn't have a career. Like you don't have to have a career to live in alignment. No.
I think that's one of the things thrivers struggle with.
To like live in alignment. What?
I think that's one of the things thrivers struggle with the most, by the way, is that true alignment for them would be not having a career at all, or at least for a lot of them. Yeah. And it's just like, that's just not how our society functions. And I think that sucks for all the thrivers out there, that to a degree, it's like, well, we're trying to find the highest degree of alignment we can within a system that's forcing you to work when really you would be happiest just not doing that at all.
Right.
So, okay, Joe, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Which is, what are your plans for getting back into alignment? I know that's a big one.
So I think taking responsibility for my alignment is like the first step, that like for me, you're catching me at an interesting time in my life and career because I will be going on maternity leave in like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll likely be on a pause from my career so that we can keep the baby home as long as we kept Lucy out of daycare, which was like almost a year and a half. However, alignment doesn't necessarily just happen with career. And what we're really talking about with me, the essence of what we're talking about with me personally, is being part of a team and collaborating with people. Connection. Yeah. And so I think, and this is actually the gift of alignment, is that it's not going out into the world and like trying to find a job or trying to find a career or any of that. It's maybe as simple as like at the beginning of the week, think like creating some type of habit around finding like projects and people to be a part of. Like one small example is one of my neighbors asked me if I'm good at organizing. She has like a built-in bookshelf that just is not organized. Nothing's like really been done with it. She mentioned this probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, this is a project that sounds like fun, like to just like go over her house and like work with her, to collaborate with her, to make this thing new. To
bring her vision to life.
Bring her vision to life. Exactly. Come up with a vision, like help her come up with the vision, like, which is just a different type of coaching, right? Like,
it really is.
And so like that would be a small thing, but especially going into maternity leave, because maternity leave can be so isolating. But yeah, I think it's a different question than like career or what's happening with career. When it's, the essence of it, I think it's focusing on the essence. And so for me, that's just like being with people, being a part of projects.
I like that.
People.
Yeah. Thanks for just hitting home and reminding people that alignment is not about your career. Alignment is about you living in tandem with how you're wired and your value system. And there are so many opportunities to do that outside of your career.
Right. And it's just like our society says that like, and so here's, I was thinking, I don't think that we are, in our culture as it is right now, I don't think that we're taught to meet our needs directly. I think we're taught to, and so I think that would be like, that's my lesson, is to meet my need directly, which like I have a need and now I take responsibility for getting that need met.
Right.
And we're kind of taught to go outside of ourselves to cater to authorities, to please teachers, to please parents, to please whoever. And then once you do that, then you get what you want.
Right. Once you adhere to the other people's idea of what alignment is, then you get to have what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's not how it actually works.
Mm-mm.
So I think there's like a part of me that's like, ooh, like, can we go back to being rescued? That sounds easier.
Oh my God. It would like 1,000% of the time it would be easier, but
but it's like, okay, I think I just need to get in. I don't know. Maybe it's just like a connection habit.
Yeah. I love this because it's doable. Like you going over to your neighbor's house and helping her create a built-in bookshelf that she's really happy with is completely doable for you. Even with a baby and another baby, like that's something that you can spend a couple hours a week, 1 week doing. And like,
right. Working with my husband, that was really like fulfilling when I was pregnant with Lucy. We had a lot of conversations about, like getting the baby's room together and making plans and things like that. So I think it's just like having projects. Then my other profile is side hustler. So I need kind of like multiple
variety
balls in the air. Yeah.
Yeah.
And variety.
Yeah.
And so I think like honoring both of those in myself. But this is a completely different question now. This is a completely different game than at the beginning when it seemed like it was a career problem with a career solution.
Yes.
Or like a job problem with a job solution.
Gosh, let's stop mistaking alignment problems for like career problems.
Yeah. Or like money problems,
relationship problems.
Problems, even health problems, I think the beauty of all of this is like getting to the essence, getting to the core of what it is.
Well, I appreciate that we were able to have this conversation, as unexpected as it was. Kristen was supposed to be here. She's not here. Lucy was not supposed to be here, and she is.
She's here.
But that's okay. We rolled with it, and I think, oh, look at her. She's so happy. And I think it was great.
Yeah. Thank you for this.
Well, okay. Tell people where they can find you, and I'll link to it in the show notes.
You can find me on Instagram, though I do check it, but I'm not necessarily posting a lot there. But you can find me on Instagram at Joanna_Platt. You can find my website at joanna-platt.com. And then you can find old episodes of my podcast. I haven't really been posting much, again, because of the fuel thing. Like,
yeah,
I just haven't had the things that I need to live in alignment to kind of show up in these places as one would need. But I do have a podcast on Spotify. If you like my point of view and you like my message, there's an archive of almost 100 episodes on Spotify and iTunes.
Is it The Joy of Enough?
The Joy of Enough. So I switched the name right before I had Lucy. And I posted one episode. So you can find it under The Joy of Enough. You can also probably find it by searching my name on one of those two platforms.
Okay.
Or the old name was Love Always Joe.
That's right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, Lucy, for being here. I wish one of her words was bye, but we haven't learned that yet.
No, not yet. You didn't learn to say bye yet, did you? You say bye-bye? You wave.
But she can wave. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that slightly whirlwind but valuable conversation. And you know what I just remembered is that during that conversation, I brought up an example from Forever Alone. And I believe that it is well within my rights to remind people, especially if you're new to this podcast, that I have, because it still exists. It ain't gone anywhere. Another podcast, a mini series called Forever Alone. And if you haven't listened to it, almost stop what you're doing just after this episode is over and go listen, because it is a 8-ish, I guess, part 7 or 8, I don't know, part series. Each episode is 30 minutes. It's kind of my memoir.
It is very well produced. It is. It touches on, I'm telling you, it touches on so many aspects of life and dating and mental health. And it's a memoir, but it's also from a coach. So you're going to get a lot of nuggets of wisdom thrown in there.
Yeah. So it's my memoir of my journey through singledom, but it begins very early on in life, because one must go back and examine how someone got, how you got to that place. You got to go back pretty far. So it was one of the more creatively fulfilling things that I have done. I will eventually do a season 2, especially now, because everyone here, spoiler alert, everyone already knows that, I was right.
No longer Forever Alone.
Not right. And God, do I love being right in public. I love being right all the time, but being right in public, chef's kiss. As a Leo, there's nothing better.
Extra satisfying.
So, I do, of course, I'll have to write a season 2 so that I can be like, well, I done told you so. And let me say, that's not really about me so much as it is about telling people who had the same fears that I have, that I told you that it will work out. I told you things will be okay. I told you that you will meet someone. I told you that if you just stick true to your values and don't let your fear outweigh what it is you believe is possible for you, you can get where you want to go. That's what I mean when I say I told you.
And honestly,
so.
That message applies to everything. So even if you're somebody who has not struggled with being single for a long time, maybe you found your person really early, or maybe that's just not the area of life you've struggled with. I guarantee you there's some area of life where you are wondering, is it ever going to happen? Am I ever going to get what I want? And so it's still a message of navigating that scary in between, and then still holding on to that hope and belief, and then the proof that things do work out. So applicable no matter what it is that you're struggling with.
Okay, well, that's just a plug for Forever Alone, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Search Forever Alone or search my name, and you should be able to find it, I guess, either way. And it's a quick binge. It's each episode is only about 30 minutes, and there's about 8. So it's maybe 4 hours of listening. Man, you can do that while you clean your house. You know?
That's a Saturday afternoon right there.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So we will be back, let's see, next Friday for a new side chat. Oh, and that one is going to be ranty. And I mean that in the best sense. We haven't recorded it yet, but we're about to. And I'm mad. And I feel like we have great podcast episodes when we're a little bit mad.
There's a lot to be mad about on this one. So enjoy in advance.
Okay, great.
Get prepared for a fun and satisfying rant about life
next week. All right. See you there.
Bye.